Hey everyone, Owen here, post edit. I just want to give you a quick rundown of how this video is going to work and what we're going to go through. So first off, I'm going to leave it as raw as possible. I'm only going to cut out the sections that I screwed up something or misspoke. So it's going to be a lengthy video, but I hope you bear with me and you can learn a lot from this video. We're going to install a new Laravel application, set up Jetstream, and then install the Stripe checkout and Stripe customer portal applications or features into the app. So a quick demo of what that looks like. If you're on the Jetstream profile page, I have dashboard as a protected route. So you have to be subscribed in order to get to the dashboard. So we're going to click dashboard. And you'll see that we're taken, instead of the dashboard, we're taken to a subscription page that says, hang on there, you need to activate this subscription before proceeding. And then they can head to the checkout page, which looks like this. It's a host a checkout page by Stripe. They can enter their information and then pay. And then, so that's the checkout portion. That'll get them an active subscription in the app. The second portion is the billing portal, which is a link under the drop-down menu. And it just looks like this. It allows the customer to edit their email and address information, and then view any past invoices or change/cancel their current plan if they had a plan. Right now, my user does not have a plan, so you see no current plans. So those will be the two things we will set up today. Hope you enjoy the video, and thanks for watching. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is create a new Laravel application. I'm going to use Laravel new. I'll call this Laravel Stripe Checkout. And I will be using Jetstream, so I'll use --jet. And then we need to choose whether it's a Livewire or Inertia. We're going to do Inertia. And whether or not we're going to use Teams. In this video, we won't use Teams. And we'll just proceed with the Laravel installation. All right, Laravel has been installed with Jetstream, so we can open that directory now in Visual Studio Code using code Laravel Stripe Checkout. That'll give us a new window. We'll close the old one, and here we are. Pop open the terminal. All right, so we're just going to configure Laravel Valet to run here, and let's just make sure we're up and running. That way we can serve the site locally. We'll make sure MySQL is running. Yep. And then we'll do Valet link. And now our site should be called Laravel Stripe Checkout.test. Unknown database. Good. Okay. So we will make sure our environment file is set up. We're going to create our database now. We'll migrate and test again. And there we have the default Laravel page. We can do register and call Owen. Sign up as a new user here. And we're into our Jetstream application. So this is perfect. Good starting point. All right, we'll clear this out. We'll move the terminal to the right-hand side. Get everything set up the way we like it. And then we'll proceed with installing Laravel Cashier. So the thing to note that at the time of recording this video, the version of Cashier that is published does not support Stripe Checkout. And instead, everything is running off a dev branch. That's probably going to be merged into version 13 of Cashier, I believe, but not 100% sure. But as of right now, we have to install a dev version. So we're going to do composer require Laravel Cashier dev, and then the name of the branch, which is Stripe Checkout. So that'll install the Stripe Checkout branch from Laravel Cashier. Meanwhile, while that's installing, we can set up environment variables. So we're going to need two new variables, and I'll put them at the bottom of my environment file, which is Stripe key and Stripe secret. Now we can get those from the Stripe dashboard. So here I have my demo account set up. And on the left, there's a developers link. Then you can click API keys. And then you can see your publishable key, which will be your Stripe key. Oh, I did not copy. And then your secret key, which is down here. So paste those in. And that's all we need right now for environment variables. Meanwhile, on the right, package has been installed, which is great. The second thing we need to do is, because we're going to be using Stripe's JavaScript stuff, we need to include that somewhere on the page. So there should be a app.blade, which Jetstream uses as the default shell. We're just going to include another JavaScript file, call it script source equals https js.stripe.com v3, and then we can also make this an async tag via defer. All right, so that'll load the local JavaScript that Stripe needs to run. Okay, so next, what I recommend doing is publishing your migrations from Cashier into your local app. That way you have them and you can change them if needed. So to do that, we'll do PHP artisan vendor publish -- tag equals cashier -migrations. And we refresh, and that adds the create customer, create subscriptions, and create subscription items table. So create customer looks like this. We have users with the Stripe ID, card brand, last 4 digits of the card, and when their trial ends. And if you're going to attach your Stripe users to a team, which means your team is the billable entity, the team is charged, and the team has its own set of users, then you need to tweak these migrations to be team-based. Both this one and in here, you'd reference a team ID instead of a user ID. Now, if you're following along with the text version of this video that's on my website, I do tweak it to be teams, so you can see what that looks like over there. Since we published our own migrations, we also need to tell Cashier that it doesn't need to run its version of the migrations anymore. So an app service provider, in the register method, we're just going to add Cashier ignore migrations. And that'll tell Cashier not to run its own migrations. Next, we need to set up our model. So in our case, the user is going to become the billable model. So what we need to do is add the billable trait to the user model. That tells Cashier that the user can be billable, and it adds a bunch of new methods, all which are in these traits. All right, the next thing we want to do is basically when a user is logged into our application, we want to ensure that they have a subscription before they can actually do anything within our application. So they shouldn't be able to see the dashboard unless they have an active subscription. So we are going to make a new middleware, call it art, which is artisan, make middleware. We'll call it subscribed Actually, we'll call it billing middleware. That's what I have in my article. All right, next we're going to assign the user to request user to get the currently authenticated user, and then if the user exists, so if they're logged in and the user subscribed default, we'll get to that in a little bit, return redirect to subscription page or subscription route. All right, so what this says is if we have a user logged in, which is this part, and the user is not subscribed to our default subscription, the name that you pass into subscribed here could be anything you want, as long as it matches when you go to create the subscription, which we'll see in a couple minutes. All right, so we've created the middleware, but now we need to add it to the kernel so that we can actually use it. So we'll open kernel from the HTTP, and we'll say middleware, route middleware at the bottom here. We'll call it billing, that we'll use in our routes file, and it'll be assigned to billing middleware. All right, the next step is to make a new controller, and this controller is going to render our page when the user is not subscribed. So we're going to make a new controller called manage subscription controller. Manage subscription controller. I like to use the invocable controller, so we're going to make a function called invoke. It will take a request because we're going to grab the current user and a bunch of stuff off of here. So basically what this controller's responsibility is to start a new checkout session with Stripe via the backend, and that will give us a token. That token we're going to pass to the front end, and then when the user clicks the checkout button, that token will be passed along and they'll be sent to the Stripe hosted checkout page. So we're going to create an instance of the checkout session, and it's going to look like request user, get the currently logged in user, new subscription, and then you pass in the name of the subscription. So in my case, I use default because in my billing middleware default, it would be a good idea probably if you want to assign this to a config variable or some sort of constant so it can't be mistyped. Then the next parameter here is the price ID from Stripe. So in our case, we're actually going to make a configuration file which stores this. But we'll get to that in 1 second. And then the last thing we're going to do here is called checkout. And then I'll format this so that we can actually see what's going on. So get the currently logged in user, create a new subscription called default, subscribing them to this price ID, which belongs to a product, and then create a new checkout session and return the checkout session. So that's what we have so far. And then once we have that checkout session, what we're going to do is, since we're using Inertia, we're going to return a new Inertia view called manage subscription. And we're going to pass along the Stripe key, which is our public publishable Stripe key. We get that from Cashier. And then our session ID, which is our checkout session ID. And that'll be checkout ID. Bring in Inertia. And so far, this is what we have. So let's go back now and set up this price ID. Under config, we're going to make a new file called stripe.php. Via PHP, we'll return an array. We'll have an item called price ID. And then what does this equal to? So in order to find the price ID, we're going to hop back just the Stripe dashboard. We're going to go to products. We're going to add a product. And you may have already done this, so bear with me. We'll call it fake product. This is a fake product for a video. And then pricing. So this is the thing they're buying, and pricing tells them, or basically tells Stripe, how are they going to pay for it. So we're going to charge $5 a month. It's going to be recurring monthly, and that's it. There's only one pricing option. So we save the product, and then here under API ID, this is our price ID. We're going to copy that. We're going to paste that into our config file. So now taking a step back, when we're creating our checkout session, we say, Cashier, create us a new subscription called default and charge them for this price ID, which would be $5 a month for access to fake product. All right, so we've created the controller. Now we need to add a route for it. So we'll go into the web routes and we'll just clean this up a little bit here. I'm going to take the middleware for auth and verified and make a group. And in that group, the first route is going to be the dashboard, which already existed. Get rid of this. And then the second route, oops, why can't I type? The second route now is going to be for what we just created. So it's going to be a get request still. We'll call it subscription. It'll be the manage subscription controller, and we'll give it a name of subscription. We can delete the existing routes since we moved them over. And then really quickly, we can just confirm the dashboard is still working. And subscription, we won't test yet because we're going to add the Inertia view first. All right, so for the Inertia view, let's hop into our JavaScript land. Pages, we're going to make a new page called Manage Subscription. Start off with the typical template. Get rid of these errors. And we'll create a script as well. And really quickly, We're going to copy from the dashboard just to get our app layout set up correctly. We can call it manage subscription here. And then instead of welcome, we'll do our custom content. So for us, the custom content is actually just going to be a button that says, or actually, we can do two things. We'll do an H2. And for classes, we'll do make it bold and a little bit bigger and say, hang on there, you need an active subscription before proceeding. So that'll be our header. And then, oops, why can't I type again? Inside here, we'll do a paragraph tag. And inside there, we'll do a jet button tag. And the button class can be a little bit of top margin, and then a click handler that says checkout or calls a checkout method. The button itself could say head to checkout page. And again, all of this in here you guys can customize to be based on your application. I'm just going to show you how to get everything up and running. All right, so we use jet buttons. We need to import jet button. From Jetstream button. And we used, oh, that was it. Oh, we used app layout as well. So we'll do import app layout from layouts, app layout. Just going to take a quick check at these other pages here. Are they all done the same? Yeah, okay. All right, so that's fine. We'll add these to our components and say jet button, app layout, and then we need to make a method for our checkout. And then inside checkout, it's pretty straightforward. This is where we're going to utilize that that front-end JavaScript file from Stripe that we included in app.blade.php. So we'll call window.stripe, and then we're going to pass in a Stripe key, which is a prop. We'll get to in a second. We're going to call redirect to checkout and pass in our session ID, which we called checkout session ID. And that should be it. So we do need to add these props. One was Stripe key and checkout session ID. When you go to do it in your app, I highly recommend not declaring props like this. Instead, use the type way so you can tell it it's required and what type of prop you're expecting. All right, so let's just quickly run through everything one more time. I am going to run the front end to make sure everything's built and up to date. So if we start with our web, the one thing we need to do is we added our billing middleware, right? And inside the kernel, we added it here. But we're not using it anywhere yet. So we actually want to protect our dashboard route with the billing middleware, which looks like that. So now if we hit the dashboard, oh, sorry. We did actually forget to migrate after we published the cashier migration. So we'll just run that again. Art migrate. Refresh the dashboard here. Home is not defined. Did I write home anywhere? Manage subscription controller. Home is not defined. Why? Oh, okay. Okay, so what the error we're getting now is when Cashier goes to make its checkout session, it wants to redirect to the home route unless we've provided a success URL or cancel URL when we go to make the checkout, which I believe would be in checkout options. So To get around that for the time being, what we're going to do is I think we can just pass in options here that say success URL and say route dashboard. And then what was the other one? Cancel URL and route dashboard. Actually, route could even be subscription here. Let's just try this quickly. Refresh. Dashboard. All right. So we'll just override the defaults to go to the home. We'll say if they successfully proceed with their checkout session, we'll redirect them back to the dashboard. If they fail or they cancel for any reason, we'll redirect them back to the subscription page. In a real application, I'd recommend you make actual pages for both of these so you can say, hey, thank you for subscribing, or sorry, it didn't work, please try again, something along those lines. So now we should be able to go to our profile. We can see everything here, but when we go to the dashboard, we get redirected to the subscription page. And it says, hang on there, you need an active subscription before proceeding. And because it's going to drive me nuts, we're going to quickly add some padding. Something P8 in there. Cool. So we click head to the checkout page. And the one thing I'm going to stop with right now is I'm running locally on Laravel Stripe checkout.test. No one except for my local machine is able to access this page. So what we need to do is, instead of accessing it through here, we're going to use expose to create an outside tunnel that can access our local running site. So now if I hit this URL created by expose, it'll be a lot slower because it's got to go outside to an external server and then back in. But you can see that we still have the same site, same application, just on a different URL. And the reason why I'm not signed in is because my cookie was attached to the other URL. And so I need to re-sign in on this URL. I don't know why the button, though, is not working. All right, it took a long time, like over half an hour, but I finally figured this out. So what was happening when I was clicking login is the login link was an HTTP link instead of an HTTPS link. So I'll just undo my change here and re-show you that. So it's an HTTP link, and then you click it, and then because you're on an HTTPS, and then you click a JavaScript link, which is trying to make like an AJAX request, essentially, you can't do that from HTTPS to HTTP. So the reason why this is HTTP instead of HTTPS. So this link is generated by Ziggy, which is included with Jetstream, and Ziggy's job is to convert your PHP routes to JavaScript. So that's all fine and good. The issue is that it uses Laravel's URL helper to generate these links. And the URL helper apparently uses the requests domain and scheme to generate the link rather than the app URL variable for some unknown bizarre reason. So the default is to not use this, and the default is to use whatever the request was sent with. I think what happens now is that when I go through expose, I'm hitting expose's server, and then the connection from expose to my local instance is HTTP, not HTTPS. So it goes from my browser to expose, that's HTTPS, then expose back to my computer, which is my client, like the server, the Laravel app, and that's over HTTP. Laravel sees HTTP and says, okay, your URLs, when we generate them, they're going to be HTTP. And then it responds with the URL as HTTP and embeds it on the page. So right now my fix and this is not a good long-term fix at all, is to just say with a URL generator, force the scheme to be HTTPS, and then any link that's generated will be HTTPS. The downside is when I go back to using the local URL, these will be HTTPS. You'll click it and it won't work for the same reason. Well, not the same reason, but because we don't have an HTTPS server. So I don't know if that's a problem with expose. I think technically it is, but for now, that's what I'm going to do to get around it, is just to force HTTPS all the time. So back to what we're doing. So we're here. We can log in now. It's still the same app. Oh, I have to refresh after that. I believe what I was showing you is that it's the same app and we can log in with the existing credentials. So we'll just log in. Again, everything will be slower because it has to go through expose, but now we're here. So now what we need to do is we need to copy our URL, our expose URL, go to Stripe, go to developers, webhooks, and we need to add an endpoint. The endpoint URL will be what we copied in, and then Stripe webhook. Now this path here is created for us by Laravel Cashier, so that's where that's coming from. I'll just say Laravel Cashier webhook endpoint. Select the events to send. I'm just going to select them all. I think that's just a good idea. That way, if Cashier ever needs something, it has it, and if it doesn't need anything, it can just ignore it. Okay, so by default, we now have a webhook that's set up to call our expose endpoint. We could send a test one here, and you'll see down here it come through. Sure. There it is, the Stripe webhook. And then I think what it did is it redirected them to the subscription page and to the dashboard, all that stuff. So that's all fine. Now we can go back to our products. Actually, we can go to customers and we can do subscriptions, and we'll sit here, and then we'll come back to our app and we'll head to the checkout page. And we have an error. The checkout is not a function. So in our view file, checkout is not a function because it should be methods. Refresh. So we're here. We go checkout. We're taking out a stripe.com. We've left our app. This is the hosted checkout page. We'll do the fake Stripe credit card. 0122. And we'll do some fake postal code. We're going to pay $5 a month to get access to our fake product. If I were to click back here, that would go to the subscription controller, the cancel URL. So in our case, it would go back to the subscription page. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to click subscribe, and then I'll be redirected to the success URL. So we let Stripe process our credit card. Good, payment went through, fake payment. And now we're taken back to the dashboard. And now we've actually been given access to the dashboard. So what's gone on in the back end is you can see all these Stripe webhooks that hit our server. Stripe fired off a bunch of events. I think we can take a look at them if we go to webhooks or just events. Yeah, events. So these are in descending order. So this was the first one here. We typed in our credit card info, which attached it to our customer ID. We created an invoice was charged, payment was successful all the way up. And then the checkout session was completed. And throughout every one of those events, Stripe is firing off webhooks to our server to let us know what's going on. Behind the scenes on our server, Cashier is taking that information and saying, okay, we have this customer ID. which was attached to my user account behind the scenes. The subscription went through for that product. So now when we check our database, we can see under users, everything looks pretty normal. We still have our customer ID here, which was generated by Cashier. We have subscriptions, which now you can see that this user is subscribed to a product called Default. Again, we typed that in manually. This is their subscription ID in Stripe. Their status is active. The plan that they're on is our price ID. They're paying for one subscription worth. And then if they had a trial, that's when it would end. And this would be when their subscription ends. Now, automatically, Stripe behind the scenes will notify, again, via the webhooks, our server if this subscription were to fail for whatever reason, if the next payment fails, if the customer cancels, etc. And then Cashier, which is why you use it, will take care of making sure that your subscription here is canceled. And then if the subscription is canceled, it will be redirected to the subscription page here instead of getting access to the dashboard. All right, so now the final step that we need to do is we need to allow the user access to their billing portal, which allows them to update their subscription, cancel it, change their credit card info, etc. Now this is actually very easy. First, what we're going to do is make a new controller. Call it, I don't know, customer. I'll call it billing portal controller. Open that guy up. We'll close everything else. We'll do our normal invoke. We will pass in a generic request. We'll say when this controller is hit, we want to grab the currently authenticated user and redirect to billing portal. Now this method comes from Cashier, and what it's going to do is redirect to this user's customer billing portal inside Stripe. We'll then add our route for this controller. It can just be anywhere. We'll do route get billing portal. Call it billing portal. In here, if I could type. Okay, so the route is set up. Last thing we need to do is add the route or a link to the route on the front end. So if we take a look at our JavaScript, JS, Jetstream, what am I looking for? Manage account. App layout. So we have profile, and then we'll just put another one here, and we'll call it billing portal, and we'll say billing portal. So we'll go back to the app, refresh. I think actually what we need to do is, yeah. Okay. So the one thing here is the default. I'm using Jetstream's default dropdown link component with an href. But this is going to generate an inertia link, which you'll see what happens when we click it. Oh, god damn, that home road is not defined again. Okay, so we're getting the same error as before. We don't have a return URL called home. Two ways to fix it. I'll fix it both ways here, though. I think we can pass in options. What was it? It's just a direct URL, so we'll just do route dashboard. So when they return from the billing portal, we're going to send them back to the dashboard. All right, so I'm just going to fix it like this right now by passing in the success URL to the redirect to billing portal method. Then we're going to come back to the dashboard and we'll refresh. We'll hit the billing portal URL again. but we'll run into a problem. And that problem is we haven't configured the portal on Stripe's side. So it's actually something you have to go in and turn on. So to do that, make sure you're logged into your account. We're in test mode, and then go to Settings, Customer Portal. In our case, we need to set up terms of service and privacy policy before we can create the portal. For testing, I'm just going to redirect them back to the dashboard. And then I haven't set up any branding or account information, but there's a whole bunch of settings you can configure with the portal. I highly suggest you go and look through this and tweak what you need to tweak. All right, so we've saved the billing portal settings. We can head back to our app and try again. And so you'll notice that nothing happened here. Behind the scenes, we have failure. So what's happening right now is the front end is sending an Inertia link to that request. So if we look here, we're sending basically an AJAX request to Stripe. Or we're sending an AJAX request to our server, which returns a redirect to Stripe. But we don't want an AJAX request. We just want a normal GET request. So we just need to change dropdown link to accept a prop called external. And then we're going to make a new computed property called tag. And it'll just return this.external, then an anchor tag, which is A. Otherwise, we'll return an inertia link. And then we're just going to put component and then is tag. And then we just need to pass external as true here. Then we can come back, refresh. Click on our billing portal. And now you can see that we've been redirected to stripe.com, which is a hosted customer portal. You can see that we're on a current plan for fake product at $5 per month. It'll renew on February 24th, 2021. You can update your information here as a customer, or you can go see your invoice by clicking this little icon. And then you can download the receipt or download the invoice, whatever you need to do. So this is the billing portal. You can see here, you can update your address and email if needed. Clicking back now will take you to that success URL that we set in the redirect to billing portal method. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a like, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter at Owen Conti. As always, there is a text version of this video on my website at owenconti.com. The link will be in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time.